Hi everyone, welcome back to Total War Therapy. I finally come back from my spiritual retreat after 1 month and I'm definitely not used anymore to speak to a microphone. Say that, I hope you had a great time, because today we're gonna see every single unit from the Tom King's unit roster, Legendary Lords included for the first time. We're gonna see their stats, how they perform in battle, and at the end we will decide if they are worthy to recruit, situational or niche, or just for fun. Hi, I'm Alberto, I'm a real person, and here you will find the beginner's guide, the battle unit roster, tier list, ranking, and many shorts. So if you wanna support the channel, please consider to subscribe. Let's start with the Legendary Lords and with Settra the Unperishable. This is the first time in this series that I'm putting the Legendary Lords, so tell me in the comment if this is a great idea or if you wanted to go back to the previous version. In any case, Settra the Unperishable is both a Wizard Lord and a melee specialist. He's quite tanky with plenty of armor, the melee attack and melee defense are very high, the weapon strength is huge with the armor piercing and anti-large bonus, but on foot I think that he doesn't shine, but he can get two different mounts in the late campaign. First, the Cambrian Wars Phoenix, that is a large single entity monster, and then the Chariot of the Gods, that I love it, first because it's a chariot and I love chariot, and then because it got an immense charge bonus of 100 only by default that you can upgrade with your skill tree and with other armaments, and please do that because you will tear apart entire lines of melee infantry. And then he got access to the lore of Nekara. That is not one of my favorite lore of magic, but still. The second Legendary Lord is the Grand Hierophant Khatep. In this case, he's a mere spellcaster, so definitely not great in melee. He can get more mobility with the steed, or he can ride a Casket of Souls, that is a very strong artillery piece, and honestly this is my favorite choice, even if you sacrifice the mobility. But in any case, he got access to the lore of Nekara, that is not an offensive lore of magic, it just buffs and buffs, so it's great if you just keep him inside your army composition, well defended by the other units. High Queen Khalida, one of my favorite Legendary Lords in the game. She's a support lord, so she gets access to no lore of magic, and she's not particularly strong in melee. She can mount the Necro Serpent, that is the construct snake, quite powerful. She has an explosion ability that when she gets surrounded she can just use and escape the situation, and then a missile ability that is quite funny to use because is this green poisonous projectile. As a lord, as I said, it's a support, so be careful to keep her close to all the other units of your army, and to find a way to make it useful. In any case, is a very charismatic woman, and I love the idea that soon I can fight Neferata with her. Arkhan the Black, another spellcaster Legendary Lord that, even if he's more tanky with more armor, more weapon strength, I would not suggest to use him in melee unless he got the chariot, his specific flying spectral chariot, that it's quite weird, honestly. I don't know if it's cringe or awesome, but probably more cringe. In any case, he's a spellcaster not with the lore of Nekara, but with the lore of death. That for me it's definitely better. I love this lore and I hate the Nekara lore. And as a second thing, he can recruit in his campaign some units from the Vampire Counts roster, so he adds a little more of variety in the early campaign. Let's move to the heroes section, and let's start with the Necrotect. That is the support hero in this roster. Even if he got the anti-infantry bonus, is definitely not a melee specialist, and it's weird that he is anti-infantry because generally characters in this game with the whip, they have the anti-large bonus. But in any case, he's a support lord, so keeping close to your troops because he got some abilities that may be nice, in particular one that replenish the hit points of constructs that, especially in the late campaign, your armies will rely massively on that. So you will need, this hero to replenish his their hit points. In any case, even with the chariot that add more mobility and power, for me is not a must to recruit choice, but just more situational and niche. The Tomb Prince is the actual melee specialist of this roster. He's definitely a tough guy with the anti-large attributes, the charge reflection, the charge defense, the anti-large bonus, ammo piercing. I would mount the steed, not the chariot, so you can keep the anti-large bonus and chase a group of cavalry. He has the guardian ability, so you will grant a physical resistance to the characters nearby, so you can keep him close to your spellcaster, for example, and then he got some abilities that can buff your allied troops and buff the enemy troops. I think that you may need one of them in your roster, but it's not that strong to be a must to recruit unit, so for me still niche and situational. The Lich Priest is the generic spellcaster hero of your Tom King's unit roster. I have to say that currently we don't have any spellcaster lord, so you will need to recruit at least one of them in any of your army, of course if there is not the legendary lords that are mostly spellcaster. He can get access to 4 different lords of magic that, except the Nekara, they are great, and he can mount a steed, not a chariot, but with a steed he will get more mobility. Of course is very weak, so you have to be extremely careful about any enemy trying to chase you, because especially with the hard setting they will prioritize the spellcaster. So I think it's a must to recruit, because as I said, you need the magical support to your army. Let's start with the melee infantry, and the first unit that we're gonna talk about are the Skeleton Warriors, that are one of the only 2 units in this roster that are recruitable without any building requirement. Or you need just the settlement. That is great, you can take as many as you want without a unit cap, but honestly I prefer the Spearman version, because I think that is just better suitable for the same job, that is to build the first line, the mid shield, to protect all the other units, or to give substance to your army composition. Now, say that, I think that the only situation when you may prefer to recruit them instead of the Spearmen Skeleton Warriors is when in the very early campaign you need to fight against the big hordes of melee infantry units, like for Settra with the zombies, or with the Khalida with the Skaven. In that case maybe they are better, and for this reason I will put them into the situational or niche category. My favorite early game frontline for the Tom King's unit roster, as I said, are the Skeleton Spearmen, that they sacrifice a little of melee attack to get additional melee defense, the anti-large bonus, the charge reflection, the charge defense versus large, and that's why they are better for this job, to protect the units from cavalry charge, monster attacks, and so on. They are very defensive, and honestly, even if they lack a lot of armor, their armor is very little, you will need to recruit many of them even in the late campaign, because the direct upgraded Tom Guard with halberds, they need the building. We can say unlock one unit to recruit with the top tier building, so you need to build a lot of them if you want to recruit many of them. That's why you will still rely a lot on the Skeleton Spearmen, and I have to put this unit in the must to recruit section. The King Nekesh Scorpion Legion is the regimental renown version of the Skeleton Spearmen that get the poison effect that reduces the speed and the damage, both ammo piercing and base, of your enemies. That is great because you can reduce the speed of the cavalry when they are psychocharging you, or just reducing the stats of the enemy you are fighting with. From this point on of the video, all the units will have unit caps, so you will need buildings to recruit them, and you will need to recruit many buildings if you want more of them. Say that, let's start with the Nekaran warriors. They are basically, you know, a grade upper compared to the skeleton warriors. They get more armor, more leadership. That is very good because it will be harder for them to crumble. They get more charge bonus, so hypothetically you can use them better to attack the flanks of your enemy army. They are lesser defensive, but they are better for the offensive strategy. They get more weapon strength and the anti-infantry bonus. So in short, you need them to deal with other melee infantry of your enemy roster, but believe me, there are not many melee infantry that they will actually win the fight with. That's why for me they are situational and niche. The Osirian Legion of the Netherworld are the version of the Nekaran warriors that you can recruit with the Mortuary Cult. That is quite different from the generic version. First, you lose completely your armor, but you will get a physical resistance of 55%, so great against the non-magical units. Then you will get the magical attack, the Frostbite effect that reduces the speed of the enemy, the ammo piercing damage, and the Strider attribute, so you will be able to cross any terrain without penalties. The Tomb Guard, in short, is the more elite and upgraded version of the Skeleton Warriors. They still get the shield, but they have enhanced attribute. Of course, to recruit this unit you need some buildings, and there is the unit cap, so you cannot recruit as many as you want, but they have a lot of melee defense, a lot of weapon strength. That's why I will still put them into the situational niche category. The Tomb Guard with the Halberd is the upgraded version of the Skeleton Spearmen. In this case they get the armor piercing attribute because they have the halberds, so they're just great, but you seriously can recruit just one of them with your top tier building, so you will not be able to have many of them even in your late campaign, so be very careful about how you deploy them. And yes, for me they are a top tier, that's why they are a must to recruit unit. The Kepra Guard is the Regiment Aranon version of the Tomb Guard, but it's actually a unique unit because they lose the shield to get dual weapon. They have the magical effect and the regeneration, so they will be far more resilient. Their problem is that for an elite unit they don't have the armor piercing damage, so you will still be able only to hit hard the not heavy armored melee infantry. That it's quite disappointing. Let's move to the missile infantry section with only one unit, actually, that are the skeleton archers. You need a building to recruit them. That it's a shame because you cannot get as many as you want, but don't worry that already in the mid-campaign you will get access to many of them. They're very useful because they have indirect fire. That means that you can deploy them behind your front line and they will shoot their arrows. The missile strength is not ammo piercing, so you should focus primarily on not armored units. Of course, they are terrible in melee. Their range is not that big, it's just 140, and I mean, it's terrible if you compare it to the other archers in the game, but they still do their job, and as I said, they are quite necessary since they are the only missile infantry in this roster. That's why for me they are a must to recruit unit. The Blessed Legion of, I cannot say this word, try to say it and you will understand why. That is the Regiment Aranon version of the Skeleton Archers. They get additional range, so they are basically a normal archers now, and they get the Sundered Armor, that basically their shots, they reduce the enemy armor of 30. That is great if you are thinking of some combined attack with Skeleton Horsemen, or just, if you want to take more use of their base missile strength. Now let's talk about artillery, and the only artillery piece that you can recruit through the buildings are the Screaming Skull catapults, that actually it may not look like, but it's a great artillery unit. I know that you should not trust a bunch of skeletons with this rudimental catapult made of bones, but believe me, it's great. A lot of ammunition with the magical damage, a range of 380, and a missile strength with ammo piercing damage and with an effect that reduces the leadership of the enemies that hit. And yeah, they're basically these giant celestial magical skulls, very big, that hit the ground and they cause this little magical explosion. So yeah, very funny to see, and a great unit. I think that every army of the Tom Kings should have at least one. The Casket of Souls is another very great artillery piece. In this case you can get access to this unit only through a rite, but yeah, it's great, very worthy. It's one single entity, but it will shoot more magical projectiles that are very accurate. They basically follow the target. The missile strength is almost 1000, enemy can be upgraded. The range is 440, that it's very long. I think is one of the longest range in the artilleries of this game. And yeah, ammunition with the magical damage. There is an ability that increases the power recharge and the spell mastery of your army, the missile resistance. You have to be very careful because it's quite weak, but for me it's another must to recruit unit. Let's move to the cavalry section, and the first unit that we're gonna address are the Skeleton Horsemen. That of course they are a terrible unit. The worst part of them is the leadership that, when you will attack in the back guard of your enemy army without characters nearby that will grant you some leadership bonus, they will start to crumble very soon. They have little armor and the shields will not save them. They have a little of charge bonus and the vanguard deployment, but overall they are very weak. If you try them against dwarves, you will see that they are just useless. But in any case, in some strategies and in the very early campaign, they can do something. They can attack very low armored missile infantry, some artillery pieces, and yeah, but you have to be very careful because if you lose enough leadership, then they will fall. So be extremely careful, and I think that in some situation and in some niche they may be good. The Nekara Horsemen are the upgraded version of the Skeleton Horsemen. They get additional armor, all the attribute enhanced, but they sacrifice a little of charge bonus and the vanguard deployment. In this case, they are a little better because they are more reliable. Even with the lesser charge, you will have less problem of getting hit so hard to lose the unit. So for me, they're definitely better, but still quite niche and situational. I would not suggest them to use them in multiplayer. The Storm Riders of Khazar is the mortuary cult version of the Nekara Horsemen, and in this case they are just a very upgraded version with more armor, with more life points. So yes, nothing to add to the generic units, but in this case they're great. Think about a very heavy cavalry, so definitely more reliable, more resilient, and you don't have to babysit it that much. The Skeleton Horse Archers are the missile version. They sacrifice a little or a lot, depends on the melee stats, to get the bows. They can fire whilst moving, but the damage is very poor. The range is dangerous because you can get within the range of other missile units of your enemy that they will be likely stronger than you. And yes, quite weak, and if you like skirmish strategy, they can be funny, but for me they are more fun to use than actually useful. Now let's talk about the skeleton chariots, and the first thing that you will notice compared to the other chariots in this game is the number of their entities, that are 12 and not anymore 4 like for most of the other faction. That you may think this is great. No, it's not great. They will actually probably lose the fight against any other chariot in the game. But to charge very low tier infantry, they are definitely great because they cover a huger area, and to zombies, to Skaven, they will deal a lot of damage. They have the anti-infantry bonus, and they get a nice charge bonus, I have to admit that. They are still skeletons, so be careful of the leadership, but the armor in this case is quite high. You can use them, definitely, I suggest it, and especially in the beginning, in the early mid-campaign, and for me they are a must to recruit unit. In this case, the missile version doesn't sacrifice any melee stat, but they still get this additional missile damage that is made with the bows. The missile strength is still very poor, the range is quite limited, but I mean, it's just an extra, and you will deal more damage while acting as the same as the generic chariots, so charging units around. That's why for me they are a must to recruit unit. Now it's time of the Necropolis Knights that are actually construct, but we will still put them into the cavalry category because they are the most elite cavalry of the Tom King's roster. They get plenty of armor, and they get the shield to be protected from missile attack. The number of entities is lower than generic cavalry, but it's okay. The speed is quite low, so you cannot use them for skirmish tactics or just to attack the back. You have to be careful if you want to attack the flanks. The melee attack is and melee defense are big with the poison effect, so they will reduce the stats and the damage of the enemies in case you are attacking fast units. They will be especially useful. The weapon strength is ammo piercing, so you can attack heavy armored units, and the charge bonus is not that great, but it's enough. I mean, 52, it's great. I just love them, and yeah, I think they will be the same model of the Pleasure Seekers of Slanesh in the next DLC. The Venom Knights of Asaph, that are the mortuary cult version of the Necropolis Knights, and even in this case there is nothing to add. Actually, they are just an upgraded version with all the attributes enhanced, particularly the life points, but not a better armor. The Necropolis Knights with the halberds are the anti-large version of the Necropolis Knights. They sacrifice the shield, so they will be less protected from missile attack, and they sacrifice all the melee attributes, melee attack, defense, weapon strength, and charge bonus to get this anti-large bonus. You will decide if it's a good trade. In any case, they are large units killers. They are very good at this job with the poison effect. They will be it will be very nice, you know, to slow down the other cavalries while you will be chasing them, and yes, I mean, they're great at what they do, but I mean, decide if it's a great trade, because you are basically sacrificing all the other attributes, and yeah, if there are not many monsters in your enemy army, it's probably better just the generic version, but for me still they are worthy to recruit unit. Of course, if you're enjoying the video, consider to support the channel with a like, sharing your opinion in the comments, or just subscribing. In the beast section we find only one unit, that are the carrion, that are basically these zombie undead vultures, that first thing that I have to say, they are in a lower number of entities compared to other flying war beasts like the harpies, the chaos furies and so on. They get the vanguard deployment. The armor is very weak, that's why you have to be very careful of enemy charging you, hitting you, finding you and so on, but they will still win the fight against very low tier flying units. The speed is huge, is 100, because of course they fly. The melee attack is very low, but the melee defense is not that bad. The weapon strength, it's actually high. The charge bonus is little. I would have wanted something more. In any case, very funny to use, but yeah, I think more niche and situational, because you can attack missile infantry, chariots and so on. You know what? I think they're a must to recruit unit, because yeah, you can bypass enemy front lines and hit directly the missile infantry and the artillery. A flock of Jaff, that is probably mute, that are the mortuary cult version of the Carrion units. That first thing that probably you may miss out, they are far bigger, okay, they are far bigger than the generic Carrions. That is a nice detail, and they have enhanced attribute, they have the fire effect, the magical effect, and this bombardment ability that they will just bombard with skulls the enemy. For me, they are very, very lovely. Now it's time for the most iconic category of the Tom King's unit roster. Of course, I'm talking about the constructs. Let's start with the Ushabti, that are these not that expensive monstrous infantry that you can recruit with just a second tier building in the military advanced section. They have plenty of armor, so they are quite immune to low tier melee infantry, for example. They have a great speed, the melee defense is good, the weapon strength is nice with armor piercing and anti-infantry bonus. They don't have a lot of charge, so I think they are most suitable for the support role. You can just absorb the damage with your front line of skeletons, and just after that attack with your Ushabti, that they will be quite protected by their armor and they will deal plenty of damage, and then they are aesthetically very, very good. The Ushabti with the great bows are definitely one of my favorite units in this game. They are basically Ushabti, but they sacrifice a little weapon strength and anti-infantry bonus to get this additional missile damage. They basically wield these giant bows with a lot of range, 255, that is closer to the one of an artillery rather than an archer, a missile infantry archer. The missile strength is very huge, is armor piercing. You should focus primarily on cavalry, on large monsters, because of course they are lesser entity, fewer entities than missile infantry unit. And then they're still very good at melee, so when they will be charged by this cavalry that you are shooting arrows at, or even by a melee infantry, they will still do the same job as the Ushabti. And yeah, that's why they are so perfect, and for me a must to recruit unit. The Chosen of the Gods are the Regiment Renown version of the Ushabti with the great bows. They get as an addition the Shield Breaker ability that reduces the missile block chance of the enemy, so in very short you have to worry less about shielded units, and you can fire at them anyway, especially shielded cavalry. The Sepulchral Stalkers are another one of my favorite units of this game. They are very specific, and that's why so interesting. They are basically these omen snake omen with anti-large attributes in melee. They have the anti-large bonus, the charge defense versus large, the charge reflection, so they are more suitable for dealing with cavalry, monsters and so on. Then they get this missile damage that it has a very little range of just 80 meters and a few ammunition of 12, but with the magical damage. But believe me, is very, very strong. If you find a way to to get into the right position and shoot at the enemy, you will do a lot of damage. And then they got the Stalk attribute, so this unit is already perfect like that. But if you add that they can move hiddenly across the battlefield and just come up at the back of the enemy and attack from there, I mean, they're just perfect. The Eyes of the Desert are the Regiment Renown version of the Sepulchral Stalkers that basically get the poison effect with their missile attack, so they will reduce the stats of the enemy they fire at, and then they will get some missile resistance, so they will be more protected by arrows and so on. The Tomb Scorpion, another of my favorite units in this game, is this little single entity monster with a lot of armor, very elusive with his animation. He can escape if he gets surrounded very, very easily. The speed is not that huge, but don't worry, the melee attack and melee defense may look low, but it still deal a lot of damage. It has the poison effect, so reduce the stats of the enemy. Armor piercing with anti-infantry bonus. The charge bonus is quite great. Then it has the Vanguard deployment, the spell resistance, and the fun fact, it's supposed to be a tomb, so there is a pharaoh inside it, and yeah, very lovely, very versatile, and I think it's quite indestructible. That's why I will put it into the must to recruit unit. The Hero Titan is a colossal man-like monster with plenty of armor, but you should still be very careful of missile attacks. Then the speed, about the speed, it's very slow, so it will be hard for him to escape situation if he gets surrounded, but still very resilient since there is a little area to cover from the enemy. The melee attack and melee defense are very huge with fire effect and magical effect. The weapon strength is very high, so perfect to deal against characters or other monsters. He got a couple of spells, one that is the Spirit Leech, very useful against the character to reduce their life points, and then the Burning Gates, that is magical missiles that you have to use before you get engaged in melee, and then the Spirit Conduit that basically help the magic of your army, the spell mastery, and the power recharge. For me, it's a niche and situational because even if it's very funny, it's not a must to recruit unit. The Bone Giant. As I said in many videos, despite for the aesthetics and for the concept, this is another one of my favorite units in this game, I think he doesn't perform that well in the battle. In melee is not that bad, I have to admit that it's hard to take him down even if it's not a damage dealer in the engaged combat. The range attack, that it's what is supposed to be its main ability, is not that good at all. It's with the magical effect, the range is the one of an artillery piece, the missile strength is very huge with anti-large bonus and ammo piercing damage, but he often misses the target, and I would not expect it from a giant, from a bone giant with the giant bow. It misses the target and the damage at the end is not that big. That's why I'm sorry to say, but he will be the only fun, no, sorry, the only fun just for fun unit of this video. The Cambrian War Sphinx. This is another very lovely giant monster in the Tom King's roster. It has plenty of armor and in this case a lot of speed. It is the same of many Monstrous Cavalry, so believe me, it can charge around enemies quite effectively and even chase some kind of cavalry. The melee attack and melee defense are not that big, but don't worry, the weapon strength will do its job, that it's armor piercing with anti-infantry bonus, and it got an additional missile damage from these archers atop its mount, with a nice range of 115 and combined a lot of missile strength. Now, this is a very lovely monster that I don't recruit that much just because many lords get access to it, but yeah, otherwise it's definitely a must to recruit unit if you want to charge around and bring the havoc into the battlefield. The last construct and last unit we're gonna talk about is the Necro Sphinx, another huge colossal monster in this amazing roster with a very great armor. In this case the speed is the same of the other War Sphinx, so very fast. The melee attack and the melee defense, especially the attack, are very high for this kind of beast. The weapon strength is more than 600 by default, with the ammo piercing damage, the anti-large bonus, and plenty of charge. This is a monster killer, a monster assassin. You have to send it even against cavalry, but it's preferable against other monsters. Back in Total War Warhammer 2, I think it was it was winning all the tournaments of the best anti-large monster, so it was defeating all the other monsters, and that's why it's so lovely. And even the aesthetics, oh my god, I really love the Tom Kings, and please give us another DLC. The Sphinx of USECP is the regimental renown version that get the fire resistance and the flaming attack, and the magical attacks. Say that, thank you for being here with me. I hope you had a great September and a great October, and let's see very soon.